life safety?
Okay, so with life safety, we have some abatement that will be taking place this week. It'll be less than about $10,000. We did our inspections. You have to do some minor abatement before demolition can occur, so that should be occurring Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. We're finalizing our packet of information for the Village of Brookfield. We'll have to file for a special use permit. We're investigating on whether or not we'll have to file for variance in regards to our tennis courts. We've been discussing some things back and forth with their village manager and their, I'm not quite sure of her title, but Heather over at the Village of Brookfield, I believe, is involved with the Planning Commission and Zoning Board. So the engineers and the architects have been kind of working back and forth on ordinances and what we'd have to do and not do in order for the special use permit, and if we need to go for a variance to slide the tennis courts back closer to Hollywood School to serve as a buffer between the proposed new parking spaces and moving the tennis courts. As Mike mentioned earlier, we need to have a minimum of 5 tennis courts in order to operate our tennis program within the conference and non-conference. So if some of that becomes a sticking point, then we'll have to revisit that. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to work through this with the Village of Brookfield. They seem to be cooperative and helping us whenever we have questions.
The special use permit, was that the permit we were always going to get from them?
Yeah, just because we're changing the use of our land, so then we're repaving the ground, and so that needs to be, it's a new use for that land. It's not changing something that's as like is, or there's a certain language, but it's a significant change from its current purpose. We have to have a special use permit and go through that. So roughly about $1,300 in permit request and hearing request in front of the zoning board.
But we still, because we're putting the stadium in the same place in a similar fashion, we're not gonna have to do anything special for that permit, right?
Correct. We had meetings with, we had a meeting with the village manager and the planning commissioner, zoning, this new person, and the architects, the engineers, and myself, and as long as those buildings, that's why we changed the building to go underneath the bleachers, and bleachers similar size, similar location, track similar size, similar location, field, all that. So that, we did not need any special use permits for that. All the special use permits and possible variance requests are dealing with that moving, the shifting of the tennis courts and the new parking spaces.
So we're submitting the documents, we're moving forward on our end to get the information over to Brookfield, and we'll be waiting for their response.
Correct. I believe then there's a staff review process, and then it goes to the zoning board. Then there's an opportunity for us to go in front of the zoning board and explain our case, or why we're requesting what we're requesting. You know, whenever you're doing this type of process, you continue to ask questions to try to get you know, make sure you're putting the best foot forward, the best proposal forward. And at some point, we have to submit a plan of what we want to do, and our engineers have reviewed everything, our architects have reviewed everything. We're within the district property lines, but since some of this is new and there's ordinances, you know, we have to look at setbacks and some things like that. The water detention and those kind of things are not an issue no longer. It's just a matter of complying with some of the village ordinances. So, you know, we're going to be putting forward the sliding the tennis courts closer to Hollywood School, going from 6 tennis courts to 5 tennis courts in order to fit into that smaller space and create a buffer in between Hollywood School and the proposed new parking spaces.
But we're ahead of, our paperwork is being done and being presented. They're not waiting on us for anything, right?
No, it's a matter of once we submit it, then it's probably a 2 or 3 month process.
Okay.
All right, any questions on life safety? John, you all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's,
So that's good. So with our paperwork, we're still gonna be on time for our project, right? Because when we,
Well, that's a good question. I think we'll be on time. Well, knock on wood. the idea is to be on time with those items that are not requiring any special use permit or approval from the village of Brookfield. So there is potential, so the track, the field, the bleachers, the locker room building, we're not anticipating any snags or hookups with that because a lot of it is replacing like with like. Where there could be some curveballs is going through the village process. If that takes longer than planned, or if that gets rejected and we have to go back to the drawing board and draw up a new plan, that would result in obviously the same parking situation on Rockefeller, but that would result in another year of our tennis programs having a playoff site until we get this figured out, or the board revisiting the relocation of the tennis courts.
Okay. Anything else?